What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to Junior and the Big Dog. I'm Junior. In a minute, you're going to meet my dad, Big Dog. This is our first ever video, first ever podcast. So let us know what you guys think. Tune in. Today, we're going to be talking about, if you haven't been able to guess yet, Miami Hurricanes football. So let's get into it. All right, Big Dog, the day has finally arrived. We are here on our first ever podcast. Me, Junior, with my dad, Big Dog. How's it going, Big Dog? How do you feel?
I'm feeling fantastic. Finally getting this underway. We've been talking about this for about a year. Shout out to our good friend Rico Hernandez. Rico, actually, we started talking about starting a podcast. It's been at least, I think it's been at least a year.
Probably more.
And thanks to your tech skills, we finally got it up and running. And looking forward to a lot more of these. We're going to be doing them weekly, with maybe a special thrown in here and there. Please hit subscribe and the notification bell, and give us feedback and comments. You're going to get a lot of content. We gather a lot of information, see a lot of film, read from a lot of different places, and you might not always agree with our opinions, but they will be informed, and you're going to get a lot of content, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable for everybody.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
looking forward to get it going.
And today we're talking about the Miami Hurricanes football, but we're gonna have a lot more topics to talk about. It's just not gonna be. It's most. I think it's gonna be Hurricanes. The focus might be the Hurricanes for sure. As you can tell, we're pretty big fans. But we're gonna talk about everything, baby. We're gonna talk about NBA, NFL. We have the draft coming up, so a lot of topics of NFL fantasy because me and you do our little breakdowns and our little projections and rankings, and so that's something that we're definitely going to bring to the table to this podcast. But yeah, to piggyback off of the reason why we actually got it started, shout out to Rico, like you said. I think it was more of just a back and forth, the little group chat that the three of us have, and a lot of not just discussions about sports, but arguments and funny conversations, stuff like that. So we always used to joke around like, hey, if we should do a podcast one time. So it came to a point of, hey, why not? But I think and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm pretty sure we're both on the same boat when it comes to this. The misinformation out there when it comes to not just our team, but sports in general, college football in general. These media personalities that we see, this is what I call them, media personalities, because their analysis and their takes on sports aren't really, you know, factual, I guess that what you could say. But I think that's one of the things that we're like, we have very good conversations and research and fact-based conversations. Of course, like my dad said, some of our opinions, you might not agree with, and you're more than welcome to leave a comment. We're definitely going to engage with you guys, through the comment section. So, we're definitely not going to be on that. But yeah, whether it's Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless or the rival scandal, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So we want to bring to the table, more of a factual and, like I said, research based opinions.
That's the thing. I mean, we can be wrong like anybody, and we can be wrong often. But at least, and that's one of the things that it just bugged me. A lot of people not doing their homework,
Hmm.
and like everything's degenerating into clickbait. Just say something outlandish that will draw attention, and your credibility doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
And that's when we started seeing more and more media personalities just throwing these opinions out there that have no basis in fact. And the more unlikely and the more contrarian and the more outlandish the opinion is, the more clickbait.
Hmm.
It gets you those clicks.
Right.
And and we talked, we do want to hit the rival scandal. For those of you that don't know, those of us that follow recruiting really closely, we've always known that when a guy commits to the University of Miami, it sort of dings him a little bit, especially if he has a hard commit that he shuts down his recruiting, like Don Chaney. did now, and Lorenzo Lingard did a couple of years ago. Guys that shut down their recruiting early and just say we're the U, it's all about Miami. They have a tendency to start dropping a little bit in the rankings, and then Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. If the recruits even have an offer from them, we've always known that they bump them up or if they commit. And what happened with Rivals, for those of you that don't know, some kids, I believe it was in Tennessee, made up, and it actually, there is a name. The name of the player was true, but the player wasn't an offensive lineman. He was a little kid, a little guy. And but they made this fake Twitter account, and they said he was like 6'5" or 6'6" and weighed 300 pounds and was this monster offensive lineman. And there wasn't even, they didn't put any fake film or anything on Twitter. They just said, there's this kid that's tearing it up. And then the kid on Twitter claims an offer from Bama. Well, Rivals gave the kid an 85 rating and a 3-star and a good scouting report about this great upside. But yet it was a fictitious kid that didn't exist. And Rivals admitted it. They apologized and the like. But here's the thing. If they do that with a kid that doesn't exist, that just says, I have an offer from Alabama, and all of a sudden you put them ahead of hundreds of kids that, were low 3-stars. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with the actual kids who are, borderline equal to another kid? Well, one kid claims an offer from Bama and the other kid doesn't. So all of a sudden, the kid that doesn't have the offer goes down to a 3-star or low 3-star, right, and the other kid gets bumped up to a 4, and it's the same player. Yeah. And I think the Rival scandal proved that. So, and you mentioned, we do follow 247, and shout out to Andrew Ivins, Chris Stock, I believe, and David Lake, who really handle a lot more of the Miami coverage. They do a fantastic job, and so I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush and saying that everyone's like that, but that's existed forever. You remember I used to tell you that I've seen that same movie, I've been a fan of the Canes since the early 70s. Mm-hmm. And I seen that same movie of, when we had those dominant teams of the 80s, our recruiting classes were never, top ranked recruiting classes. But yet we dominated Saturdays and Sundays, because that's the difference between the U and Bama. When Bama's dominating now, they're not dominating Sundays the way the U used to dominate Sundays when we were on top. Mm-hmm. They're dominating Saturdays, and they deserve all the credit for that. But that's the difference. And so I just don't understand how people are giving them a mulligan. Like, okay, this happened, but that doesn't prove that the system is imbalanced. Right. No, that actually does prove it. Right. Because here's a fictitious kid who got ranked ahead of hundreds of players just because he says on Twitter, I have an offer from Bama. Right. So what does that tell you? Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, when you and I see a kid, we immediately start looking for film. Where can we see tape of the kid, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Max Prep, wherever it is that we can, gather some information. And like I said, that we make our own judgment. We might be wrong, we might be right, but at least it's an informed judgment that's not biased by, how many stars somebody has.
Well, like regardless of the whole Rival scandal, I stopped paying attention and worrying so much about the star ratings of these high school kids, because it all depends on where they're playing. Frankly, the competition in Florida, the competition in Georgia, Texas, California, the competition in those high schools, there's a big gap compared to the competition, across the rest of the country. So you might have a kid, in Florida that's a 3-star, but you put him anywhere else in the country, and he could be a 5-star. So you can't always evaluate talent based on star ratings. And the fact that Rivals did that, I mean, that was just it was just terrible. So 24/7, to their credit, are no longer putting their composite rankings unless they actually scout the kid. So shout out to 24/7. I've never really went to Rivals anyway, but what's the saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
That's
So
right.
that whole scandal took a big hit on Rivals. But yeah,
That's the thing. I mean, the thing is, like I said, you and I might look at the same kid and have two different opinions,
right,
but at least we're going to give you what that opinion is.
yeah,
Not, oh, wait a second, he has a Bama offer or he has an Ohio State offer. Let me all of a sudden make this kid the second coming of Adrian Peterson
hmm
or the second coming of Lawrence Taylor just because of his offer list.
well, that's the thing. I mean, when you have the schools on top, like Bama, Clemson, Georgia, these people look at it as if, okay, well, if they got an offer from one of these big schools, then they have to be good. So I mean,
Right.
let's bump up a star. Let's make that 3 star now a 4 star because hey, if Clemson or Bama wants him, then this kid has to be the real deal. So I
Right.
mean, that's just something that has always rubbed me the wrong way. But not to beat a dead horse. Let's get into some Miami Hurricanes football. Obviously, we're going to talk about Manny. The things that he's done for the program. We're going to talk about spring practice. We're talking about the scrimmage at the Mecca, obviously, and our evaluation based on the team so far and the coaching staff. But I think before we get to Manny and before we get to all the other stuff, I think we should at least talk a little bit about Mark Richt and the transition from Richt and how we kind of started losing faith and how that ended up bringing Manny in.
Absolutely. I mean, and there is, in all fairness, there's a lot of positives that we have to discuss when we talk about Mark Richt and put the end of that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mark Richt, first off, remember where he took over the program. Where people are flying airplanes asking for Al Golden to be fired,
Mm-hmm.
and then Golden, of course, was fired. Get an interim coach to finish the season, and that's where Mark Richt took over. And you look at what he did. First off, let's talk about his contribution to the university
Mm-hmm.
because I remember people talking about an indoor practice facility since the 80s that people said, well, if we want to compete for national championships all the time, we have to upgrade our facilities and we need an indoor practice facility. Well, that never happened in those 30 years until Mark Richt got to the U, and then he put $1 million of his own dollars towards the practice facility,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of coaches would not do.
No.
And so he deserves credit for that, credit for the recruiting classes, the focus that he had on the cane walk,
Mm-hmm.
the entering of the stadium and really building up some traditions that I don't remember ever having a coach really talking about the cane walk every single week.
Right.
And he did have, that 2018 recruiting class was an all-time recruiting class. I know it was the first time, whatever, in 10 years that the University of Miami has been in the top 10, but even ESPN, Tom Luganbill, called it in the skill positions the best recruiting class in the country. Because you look at, we had 2 of the top 10 running backs. Now we have 3 with Asa Martin
Mm-hmm.
transferring in. So we have Lingard, Asa Martin, and Cam Davis,
Harris.
who is now Cam Harris.
Right.
So I got to get used to calling him Cam Harris.
Yeah.
But we have Jaron Williams, of course, was in that class. And people forget that the other 2 schools in the running for Jaron after he decommitted from Kentucky was Alabama and Ohio State.
Right.
And Jaron picked Miami.
Right.
And I mean, we can keep going on and on. Nesta was the second-ranked defensive tackle in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Scaife was a top, I think it was a top 5 guard. I mean, it goes on and on. Mark Pope
Rousseau.
was highly ranked. Believe that
Hey.
you talk about rankings. How does Greg Rousseau? How is he a 3-star when the kid is 6'6"? Okay, now he's up to 250 and super fast. I mean, he played safety, wide receiver, played all over. I mean, yeah, it was a smaller school. It was Champagnat Catholic
Mm-hmm.
over in Hialeah, but it was a smaller school. But I mean, he looked like he was a man playing with boys in his high school film.
Right.
And but yeah, that's I can't wait to see Rousseau unleashed on college football this year.
He's
So
the spring practice and the scrimmage king because it feels like every single scrimmage or every single spring practice, he's getting like 4 or 5 sacks. So I can't wait to see. Obviously he had the injury last year, so he missed the majority of the season. But I think this year is going to be obviously his breakout season, and a lot of people are gonna know his name. That's for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And I can't wait to see that. So you look at all the things that Rick did for the program, and obviously not the least of which he brought us Manny Diaz, because
Right.
if it wasn't for Rick, we wouldn't have had Manny.
100%.
So, the contributions to the program. First off, Mark Richt has been in the public eye a long time. I
Hmm.
mean, 30, he played at Miami. I think it was from 79, I want to say, to 82 or 83. And then he was an assistant for FSU for 15 years, and then head coach at Georgia for 15 years.
Right.
And in that time, there's not a single person that can really say a negative word about him as a person. And so Mark Richt, as a human being, has my respect and admiration, all that he did for the program. Listen, just the fact that he didn't take a buyout, which he could have done,
Hmm.
when if they were forcing his hand to get rid of somebody, or a few people on the offensive staff,
His
and
son,
he didn't want,
especially.
starting with his son,
Right.
um, if he did not want to do that, he could have forced the university to buy him out.
Right.
And now think, what would have made of what difference would that have made? Because we had to give $4 million to Temple
Oh, we don't
to
get
get
Manny.
Manny back.
Oh, we don't get Manny. There's no way.
Exactly, exactly. So if Rick takes the buyout, we can't afford to get Manny.
Right.
You know, so listen, I was as frustrated as anybody in this world. The thing that I hold against them the most was the whole debacle with the strength and conditioning coach. Supposedly, as the rumor flies, he wasn't always there for player workouts. That players would show up and he was a no-show. The fact that Rick permitted that, how do you hold players accountable when you don't hold a grown man who's the strength and conditioning coach, and Gus Felder, you don't hold him accountable?
Well, and we saw it on the field. We saw it with DJ. We saw it with Jaron. Gaining unhealthy weight. But I mean, you can't hold those kids accountable if they show up to work and the strength and conditioning coach is just either he's not there, or he's not putting in the time that for these kids. So you
Exactly.
can't blame the kids. But yeah, Mark Richt, I know a lot of people are frustrated with Mark Richt, especially the way he handled the quarterback situation. It felt like he had this phobia of playing freshmen because he wanted, things done a certain way. And if, yeah, you could have flashes and you could look great, but if you didn't do it exactly the way he wanted it to be done, then you couldn't see the field. I mean, we heard it with Jaron. Or we heard it, through all the spring practice. Oh, he hits his target, completing, what was it, 68% of his passes. Anything he aims at, he hits it. But he needs to know why he's doing the good things that he's doing. So, one of the comments that he said that really took me back was, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it quite this way, was the players basically have to prove to the coaches and make the coaches feel comfortable to give them a chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was something along
Yeah,
along
yeah.
the lines of that. So it was basically Mark Rick saying, no, like he's ready and he has all the tools and he's good, but we need to feel comfortable playing them. Like what? Like this is the University of Miami. This is the U. You put the best talent on the field no matter what, and that's the way it's always been. So I think that was the beginning of his downfall, and we saw it throughout the whole season. And then his handling of the quarterback situation. I mean, it was so bad that you brought up the banners with Golden. The banners were gonna come soon for Rick. So, but the fact that and going back to the type of person that he knew that the direction that he wanted the team to go in, wasn't going to be the best for the University of Miami. So the fact that he really did, step down and he didn't take that money is because he cares about the university and he does want to see the university win. So, you know, Yeah, he had his faults, and yeah, one of the knocks on Richt in Georgia was that he never won a championship. But you know, I just think he did so many great things for this program. Yeah, I go back to the Clemson game under Golden. It was 58-0, I believe it was, right? 58-0,
Yeah.
and that was like one of the lowest points. And for Rick to come in and put us back on the map, the way he did. Obviously Manny has a lot of credit because of the turnover chain, and then bringing that defense back and that swag back. So I know Manny has a lot of credit, but none of that happens without Mark Richt. So I mean, shout out to Rick. Still love you, man. I mean, without you, we don't have Manny. The indoor practice facility is beautiful. So none of those things happen without Rick. But let's not beat a dead horse with Rick. Let's start talking about Manny and what Manny basically did from since day one. Frankly, firing the entire offensive coaching staff, and basically, I mean, you could talk about countless things. He gets it. Manny gets it. He grew up a Canes fan. He grew up down here. Father's mayor. So I mean, he knows what it takes. He knows what it means, and all of his actions and everything, all the moves that he's made has basically really shown you that it's a blessing. He was my first choice. When Rick retired, he was your first choice. So the fact that we were able to actually get him back, I mean, that's gonna show how much it means for this program going into the future.
Well, and to clarify that, or piggyback on it, even though you and I, when we talked that morning, that you called me and said, "Hey, Mark Rick resigned," and I was like, "What?" And immediately I jumped up and went, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And we started talking. It's like, well, we both said Manny as our first choice. We talked about Mario Cristobal. We talked about, I think people were saying Greg Schiano.
Shoot,
Obviously
Butch.
Butch.
Yeah, people were
Butch.
saying.
Any time that Miami had an opening for head coach, Butch was always a fan's choice, and he was our choice too.
Right.
But obviously now Butch is in his 60s, and it's a different ball game now for him. Although he's doing a good job over at FAU. But when we started talking about Manny, we never thought that Manny would, 3 months later, we would be in a position of he takes over right after that beatdown against Wisconsin, where we lose 35-3. We have Rick resign, Manny takes over. What we were thinking, well, Manny's going to come in and hire his own offensive staff, and maybe we'll get a guy like Larry Fedora, or we'll get Major Applewhite or T. Martin. And all of a sudden, not only does Manny not do that, he goes and steals the offensive coordinator from Bama, because Enos was a quarterback's coach, but he was in negotiations since the OC had left Bama to take over as a head coach of Maryland. Dan Enos was negotiating the contract to become the OC at Alabama. And all of a sudden, he and Manny talk, and we find out that we get the guy who was quarterback's coach for Tua and for Jalen Hurts to become our offensive coordinator. So that exceeded our expectations. What he did with the offensive staff exceeded it. The recruiting department, promoting David Cooney, firing Matt Doherty, moving it around, bringing in DeMarcus Van Dyke. He brought in Dallas Crawford. He brought in Jesse Stone from Georgia. All these little moves that he did.
Eric Hickson,
Taylor Stubblefield,
wide receiver coach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look at what he did with Stroud, who's the defensive line coach. He hired Stroud well before Jess Simpson even left.
Right.
So Simpson leaves to go back to the NFL. All of a sudden, Stroud's already in there.
Right.
He already has a relationship with the players.
Exactly. Yep.
And he takes over as D-line coach.
Right.
Just making brilliant moves.
Yep.
And then what he did with the portal. because people don't realize this. 247, for some reason or other, they stopped talking about this. But if you look at University of Miami's class and include transfers in their class, it was a top 3 class. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is, and you can even make a case it might have been the number 1 class in terms of total points that 247 use it for composite.
Right.
Okay, so you look at the type of talent that they added through the transfer portal. Not only Tate Martell, Asa Martin, a top 10 running back, Tommy Kennedy, who was one of the prized.
We'll get into Tommy Kennedy when we start talking about the spring practice.
Yeah, but at the time, at least, he was wanted by a lot of big time schools.
Yeah. J. Osborne,
even though
was a heck of a pickup.
That's a huge pickup for us.
Yeah.
Go to the defensive side, Trayvon Hill, Chikosi, and Aruka, who I always mispronounce his name.
Yeah.
And of course, Jalen Phillips, number 1 player of the 2017 class.
Yep.
Bubba Bolden. And Bubba,
I can't wait for
he hasn't even gone to the U yet. And this guy already reps the U constantly on Twitter.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think he had a lot to do with Tate Martell.
Absolutely.
Choosing us.
And he had a lot to do with Miami became not only the king of the transfer portals. I think 7 of the top 17 transfers went to Miami. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Miami got into the national news with a positive light. Mm-hmm. Remember, HBO just did a Manny Diaz piece on Real Sports last month in March on Manny. So he took over the program that was 7-6 season after being in the top 10 to start the season, getting destroyed by Wisconsin and getting beat by Wisconsin the 2nd straight year, losing Mark Richt, hiring a first-time head coach. And all of a sudden, he took the negative publicity and the negative juice that was with Miami and turned it 180 around.
And
Miami became the talk of the country.
I'm gonna say something that to me was one of the most important things that happened, especially for the upcoming season. If Manny doesn't come in and take over as head coach, we lose Shaq, we lose Pickney. I mean, mm-hmm. Dude,
McLeod.
We lose McLeod, and we'll see. I haven't really heard much about Bradley and Jennings and how bad that injury was on the scrimmage, but we lost Steed, so take away already our injuries with our backup linebackers, and take away also Shaq, McLeod, Pickney. I mean, our linebackers was one of our biggest strengths on defense. Our defensive line, obviously, but having Shaq there, Pickney, and McLeod, I don't think either one of them return if it's not for Manny.
Oh, no doubt. Without Manny, they don't come back. And then you're looking at all of a sudden throwing Steed and Jennings and Wilder has a neck injury. Steed now had surgery on his knee, and we don't know yet about Jennings. Praying that it's not anything serious.
It looked bad.
But
I will say this: it looked bad. I was there, and it did not look good for Jennings.
I did see Manny in the post game interview actually said it was a groin issue, which is obviously better news than if it was a knee. But it when I saw him, at least I was watching it on Twitter, and when it looked like he was coming off the field, it looked more like a knee.
Well,
because it looked like he wasn't wanting to put weight on it at all.
Well, when he was down for a long time, and then finally when he was getting helped off the field, I noticed that he didn't want to put any weight on that left leg. And then I was sitting right there close to the the medical tent, and they had him there, and there were a lot of people around him, so you couldn't really tell exactly what it was that they were working on, but yeah, it didn't look good. But let's not get too off track. Manny, right. the thing that he did in Orlando, and he's bringing this swag and this FU mentality and us against the world mentality, and creating relationships with these high school coaches the way he did in Orlando, and he just basically crashed it. I mean, he crashed that thing in Orlando, and what was he doing? He was handing out beers to high school coaches and talking to high school coaches. So you had literally What was it? Because I know there was an FSU.
Coaching clinic.
It was a coaching clinic going on. So then you basically had people like leaving clinics to coming over and seeing the hype about what Manny was doing. You know what I'm saying? Creating this big fuss and stuff like that. And his Twitter game. We have to talk about Manny's Twitter game. These kids are always on social media. They're always on Twitter, and he gets it. He gets it. He has the pulse of this modern era where social media is so crucial and so big to these young recruits, and they see it and they love it. And anytime Manny would post a tweet with a hurricane, or like, we're always like on our on the edge of our heels, like, okay, something's coming, something big is coming, and then sure enough, boom, we got Tate Martell, or boom, he'll come out with something else, we'll get Jalen Phillips. So he gets the
JT coming back. Remember, it was whatever, he's a category 4 when JT was coming back.
Everybody was just going crazy. He had everybody at the edge of their seats, like, okay, hey, Manny just posted this, what's coming? He's the I call him Manos. Shout out to Avengers, okay? He's the portal king. So, I mean, what he did in the portal and what he's doing on Twitter, and it's just, you can't measure it. You cannot measure it, and this does not feel like a team, and this does not feel like, frankly, a city that, just came off a 7-6 season. The hype is back. The hype is real. Everybody is excited. I was at that scrimmage yesterday, and it was packed. I mean, it was noon. There's no cover at the Mecca. There's no roofing. There's nothing. So I mean, and it was packed. And people were already there since like 7, 8 in the morning, just because of the hype that Manny has created, frankly. And he keeps on doing just amazing things.
The strangest thing is, I was probably out of two of the hires as head coaches that I was most excited about when they happened was Randy Shannon and Mark Richt, because both of those guys played for the U.
Right.
So you think that those guys, if anybody, get what being the U is all about. But in reality, both those guys have something in common. And this is not a knock on them. It's reality. They're both good Christian men. Mm-hmm. They're both nice guys. And I'm not saying Manny's not. And Manny's talked about his faith also. Yeah. So I'm not saying that Manny is not. But it seems to me that Randy Shannon and Mark Richt both put those, how can I put it? The being a low-key good person above winning, above being the you. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the hashtag? I think it was Cam Underwood started the hashtag, Let's be jerks again.
Yeah.
That's when the you has been the you. We were never loved in college football. Mm-hmm. We were hated. Yeah. The Miami rules. They made rules specifically that everybody was calling the Miami rules because they didn't like the way the U handled their business.
Right.
The famous Cotton Bowl game when they beat Texas 46-3 with over 200 yards of penalties. Mm-hmm. That type of thing. Manny gets that in a way that even Randy Shannon and Mark Richt, who played at the U, don't get. Mm-hmm. Because they're different personality types. Right. Manny's, and obviously I'm not comparing him as coaches, because Manny as a head coach has to, we love what he's done up until now.
He has to prove it.
Ultimately, correct. The games have to decide. Mm-hmm. But Manny personality reminds me of Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
That type of personality of, no, we don't care that we're the bad boys. Let's be the bad boys. Let's be the jerks, but let's win.
And he went to visit. He went to visit Jimmy Johnson because he knows.
Absolutely.
He knows.
And the whole staff went there. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that has Jimmy excited about Manny, is that he sees a lot of himself in Manny.
Right.
And that type of attitude. You talk about the Orlando thing. Manny got criticized by the press. They made, I'm sure it wasn't as raucous and as crazy as people made it out to be. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, Manny didn't do that for the press. He didn't do that to show up FSU. He did it to get to those coaches who would then relay to the players what Manny did.
Right.
And players love that.
Mm-hmm.
They feed into the you type of player, at least
Right.
feed into being the villain.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
what did Michael Irvin used to say? He said in the 30 for 30 that he said we would tell you we were going to beat you before the game. During the game, we tell you we're beating you as we're doing it, and then after the game, we told you we beat you and walked off with your girlfriend.
There you go.
That was what the U is all about.
There you go.
And Manny gets that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he gets that in a way that I think the last coach maybe that got it that way was Butch, was probably Butch.
Mm-hmm.
And that really understood that that's part of that mentality that you have to have in order to be who we were.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Manny has in a 3 or 4 month span done things that we, as much as we wanted him, we never expected him to have turned it 180 degrees, where all of a sudden the U became the talk of the country as something positive.
Well, no, we expected it. We just didn't see it coming this soon.
Oh no, not this soon at all.
Right.
And I knew had been the talk of the country when the NCAA started saying, "Well, wait a second, let's review our waiver process on these transfers in the portal," because all of a sudden it was, "Hey, Miami got Tate Martell. Hey, Miami got Bubba Bolden. Hey, Miami got Asa Martin." You know, all these guys that were top-notch guys, Trayvon Hill, Jalen Phillips, the number one guy in the entire 2017 class.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the NCAA said, "Well, wait a second, let's pump the brakes on this."
Well, that was before we got Tate, though.
Absolutely. Well, we got Tate in January. And then
I'm talking about the waiver.
Right.
Moving of the waiver. Like
correct.
They started changing. They started just handing out waivers to all these kids, and then all of a sudden, you know, when the Tate Martell, you know, decision was upcoming, then they were like, okay, wait a second, you know, the Hurricanes are doing the most damage with this transfer portal, and so let's take a closer look at this whole Tate Martell situation. So I was one of those people that wasn't very confident that he was actually going to get approved, but I just feel like the NCAA would have you know gotten a lot of backlash if he didn't, because they gave it to the fields like this.
Yeah, but you know what? To me, it had nothing to do with that. The only reason we lucked out and got the waiver, in my opinion, for Tate Martell is August 24th. That is the only reason, because they wanted to move the game to a week earlier to coincide
with
a
deal there.
Absolutely. Okay. I think ESPN got involved. Remember, they're going to televise the game, and then they wanted to make it for the 24th, so it would coincide with the 150 anniversary of college football.
Right.
So if they wanted to move the game, and I'm sure the ESPN loves the idea of the Tate Martell angle, because then they could play up that angle of the Netflix guy, you know, the guy that was on QB1 and the transfer from Ohio State, and they can bring up the Justin Fields incident that had a racial component to it, and all these different things. ESPN has a built-in storyline. If they don't grant the waiver to Tate Martell, there is no storyline about Tate Martell.
Right. Well, you know, we'll see if there's going to be any storyline with Tate Martell, which I think we should go ahead and transition into spring practice and how things have been looking thus far, not just with the quarterbacks, but, you know, with the team overall.
Let's do that. The lot of good things to talk about in spring. The thing that has me worried is, man, we've had some injuries. You know, we've had some guys banged up. You know, fortunately, most of them have been not severe. Obviously, the Wayman Steed one is you know, breaks your heart a bit, because he really was going to step up this year as a backup to Pinckney, and he was going to get some more playing time, and people said he was coming on, and then tears up the same knee, I believe, that he had tore up in high school.
Now, look, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to input just one thing when it comes to that. How much do you think that has to do with the conditioning that these kids were receiving under Felder and Mark Richt, and now Manny Diaz ramping up these practices and ramping like taking these practices to another level that maybe these kids weren't necessarily used to in practice. So you have these kids coming off, not just an off season, but even during the season where they weren't getting the correct or the necessary amount of conditioning and strength training. So then all of a sudden, they transition into spring, with Manny, and now Manny has a different way of doing things. His practices are different. So physically, I'm not sure some of these injuries are not, because of the lack of conditioning and the lack of strength training, with.
You mean under Felder, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's impossible to determine.
But it's a lot. But there's a lot of little nicks here and there, and a lot of injuries. That's not.
No, there is, and you wonder if, obviously, I really like David Feely. It really seems that he is a huge upgrade over Felder, a strength and conditioning coach, because it really seems that he's in a lot more focus, even on practices. He's there during the practices to work on things or to analyze things, to see things, to get the players hyped up.
Right.
And he always does something different. I mean, he really seems like he's been a great find as a strength and conditioning coach, as Coach Feely. But, you're right. I mean, the amount of injuries is troubling. Manny obviously has ramped up the energy at practices, but at the end of the day, I'm sorry, you have to practice that way if you're going to be elite. If you want to be elite, one of the things that, and I'll go back to like the old Hurricane fans will remember this. Players, even starting back in the 80s, they used to say that Saturdays was easy for them.
Because of the competition that was created, yeah.
During the week. If you were a DB, you were competing against Michael Irvin, and Michael Irvin wanted to beat you in every single drill on every single pattern. You were competing against, if you were an offensive lineman, you were competing against guys like, Russell Maryland. I mean, going back to the 80s, I could count, Greg Mark and all these other guys Bill Hawkins, was a great guy back in the day. One of the best defensive linemen to me that unfortunately tore his leg up really badly, Rusty Medeiros. Rusty was a beast. He was in the early 90s, though. But you look at all those guys, you were going against top-notch guys, and you were going at a fever pitch.
Yeah.
You were going hyper-competitive. Yeah. So when Saturdays came, please, if I'm a cornerback, I just competed against Michael Irvin all week.
Right.
You think you're going to sit there and catch a pass on me?
Yeah. No. My only point is just that these kids they're not used to it.
No,
they weren't used to it last year.
And if you hear them, every single interview that we have seen, whether it's offensive, defensive guys, it doesn't matter. What do they say the first thing when they ask them what's different from last year? They say the energy,
100%.
The energy and the vibe and the competition, the big cane drill. These are things to increase toughness.
And not just the big cane drill, not just with the big boys. I mean, we have, the quarterbacks going at it. We have corners. We have everybody. You never know who's going to be in the big cane drill. So that's something that he's bringing to the table, and it's just competition, and he preaches it: competition, focus, and we see it. We see it with the music blaring. We see it. The kids just look different when they're being interviewed, and then
absolutely
their eyes light up. When they're asked, comparing how it is, this spring compared to last spring and stuff like that, they're like, man, like you could just tell they're having a good time. They're having a good time, and they like that competition, and that's what the U has always been about.
If you are a top tier athlete, competing is something that you have in your bones. You want that. You want to be pushed. Yeah. You want to be driven, because that's the only thing that's going to make you better.
Right.
So this idea, and maybe hopefully this little injury bug that we have in the short term is just guys getting used to it being ramped up to another notch.
Mm-hmm.
And that David Feely, after an extended period of time, because a strength and conditioning coach, for them to make the difference, it's more than just 3 months.
Of
I mean,
course.
they have to do an extended program. So hopefully that won't be the case going forward in the summer where we have as many injuries. But, you know, it's either way we're guessing.
Yeah.
Either way we're guessing because there's no way to prove what we're saying. But it makes sense that we're seeing a little bit more injuries because that effort level and that energy level and that competition level
Mm-hmm.
is being ramped up to a notch that the players weren't used to. And then coming off a strength and conditioning program that was mediocre with Gus Felder,
Right.
and now you're putting the bar much higher.
Exactly. Well,
I mean,
I much rather see these injuries right now than later on in the fall. So hopefully these guys just get
absolutely.
healthy. Keep them out if they're dinged up. Keep them out, especially players like Brevin Jordan. Or Mattery is looking pretty freaking good, to be honest with you. But those guys that that are dinged up, but that they're gonna perform when the time comes. Just give them enough time to to recover and recuperate. So I got a question.
Sure.
We have a lot of spring practices that we've already seen and heard about. What's basically as a whole your takeaway from where we're at right now?
Well, we're 12 practices in and 2 scrimmages, one public and one non-public, into it. I'm really, really happy with the competition level. I think everybody's talked about that. We both have something in common, that the guy that we tabbed for our quarterbacks is Jaron Williams.
Well,
We're both Jaron Williams guys.
let's not get into the quarterbacks. Yeah, I should have stated that. Besides the quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks, right. Besides the quarterbacks, obviously Tommy Kennedy not working out like we hoped.
That's something
has
that
been
has
a disappointment.
Been an eye opener. It sounds like he's getting bullied.
I think, and you're right. We'll talk about the quarterbacks in a minute, but I'm going to put them to the side by saying, here's the reality. The reality is we have 3 of the top. They were the top 5 or were the top 7, whatever you want to call it, quarterbacks competing at Miami. And because Tate was the number 2 dual threat quarterback the year he came out. Jaron was the number 5 pro style passer, even though he's a very good athlete, which we'll talk about. And then Nkosi I think he was number 3 dual threat at ESPN. I think he was number 7 in the 247 composite.
Yeah.
But regardless, 3 top tier guys, high 4-star or 5-star type of guys. That I feel confident, and we have Dan Enos as the quarterback coach, so I feel confident whoever comes out of there will be doing the job. The one part that worries me is that offensive line. We seem to have 3 guys that are super solid guys, that are star level guys in Donaldson, Scaife, and Corey Gaynor, who is one of the guys that's banged up. But hopefully it seems to be nothing serious.
Right.
So those 3 guys, which should be the center, left guard, left tackle. Because I believe Scaife is going to end up as the left tackle.
Yeah, he's made a big jump.
He has, and the kid, even though he came out as a guard, he does have long arms. He is 6'4", so it's not like he's not built for a tackle. Donaldson was built for tackle, but obviously he doesn't have the feet for it.
Yeah.
So he's a monster guard.
Yeah.
So let's instead of worrying about the fact that he wasn't the tackle that we had hoped for, let's just take advantage of the fact that he is a huge, monstrous guard. That's a load on the second level.
Absolutely.
And Corey Gaynor looks like he's going to pick up right where Tyler Gauthier, left off in terms of being the leader of that offensive line. He has some experience because he played quite a bit. He redshirted last year, but he played quite a bit in 2017. So those 3 are going to be somewhere on that line, and we can feel confident in them. The problem is, who's the other 2?
Right.
So far, it seems that Zalante Hillary is going to be the right guard if everyone is healthy. And then the right tackle, I'm leaning towards John Campbell. I think it'll be John Campbell once he gets healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that's our best line.
Yeah.
But the disappointment of Tommy Kennedy.
Right.
Because a lot of people believed, this guy, he was going to be a plug and play left tackle. He's on his way to the NFL, and he has to just increase his strength, but he has beautiful footwork. And man, like you said, he's been getting manhandled.
Yeah, absolutely. My thing with the offensive line, I just want consistency.
Yeah,
I want guys that, okay, we know, like you said, Scaife is gonna be our left tackle, Donaldson's gonna be our guard, Gainer's gonna be our center. Now, obviously, we have some question marks, but once we do find that guy, what I don't like is the rotation and the rotating players on plugging in for one game and then trying to find. I want to have that solved before August 24th.
Absolutely.
Because having that group together and and working together and having that camaraderie on the offensive line, that is just that's big. That's big, and that's going to help our running game. It's going to help our quarterbacks. I mean, the games are won in the trenches. On the defensive side of the ball, I think we're fine. Matter of fact, I think we're more than fine. So on the offensive side of the ball, we have to get back to those days of having those dominant offensive lines that the Canes have had in the past, and that's one of those things that we've been missing for a very long time.
I do think we got a huge upgrade in Butch Barry as our offensive line coach over Stacy Searles.
Well, he brings that NFL experience, that technique, and
correct.
Yeah,
correct. And frankly, under Stacy Searles, I saw very little development of some really highly rated guys.
Little,
because people forget.
You saw little development because I didn't see any.
Exactly.
I didn't see any development.
Well, and you got guys like Kaleon Herbert, Zalante Hillary, who, by the way, I do think is better suited to guard than he was at tackle.
Right.
He really physically is not the tackle. He doesn't have the long arms and those type of things. This is why they kicked him inside. Mm-hmm. But these guys were Kaleon Herbert was highly regarded.
Right.
And he's been in the program 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, he's not ready to take over at one of the tackle positions.
Yeah.
John Campbell's only been in the program 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And he was part of that 2018 class. Mm-hmm. I really was hoping to see more development from Cleveland Reed because you look at his film and he played with an edge.
Yeah, he did.
But he's now a second team at guard. So we'll see. I mean, it seems so far that the best five has been Scaife at left tackle, Donaldson at left guard, Gainer at center, and they said that those three have a great combination going in terms of really having a rapport and what you talked about, that camaraderie and communication that offensive lines need to have. And then in the right guard, on the right side is where we had problems.
Right.
They moved Scaife over there at the guard temporarily because of some injuries. George Brown, I think, has been a little banged up at the tackle. Campbell has been banged up. But if everybody's healthy, I like that starting five of Scaife, Donaldson, Gainer, Hillary, and John Campbell, which I think is what Butch Barry likes. Mm-hmm. I also like the fact that Butch Barry, his idea of offensive linemen is brilliant. I think that's the best way to do it. It's the way Wisconsin does it also, is he likes athletic guys who haven't filled out yet. Mm-hmm. The 6'5", 240 guy like Zion Nelson is one of those guys. He's up to 270, I think, since he reported. Mm-hmm. But he's one of those guys that was very athletic, and he's been our backup tackle, and he's gotten a lot of first-team reps at left tackle. Mm-hmm. So those type of guys, I agree with that. I like that concept of it's a lot easier building a lineman up with good weight than trying to get rid of bad weight. It is a different type of concept. Right. So I do like our offensive line coach, but you're right. What if that's our starting five? Is Nelson gonna be the backup left tackle? If something happens to Gainer, are we gonna kick Donaldson to center the way we've been doing? Because Tommy Kennedy was the backup center. Gainer gets hurt, they don't put Kennedy with the first team. They move Donaldson, who has never played center.
Right.
Move him to be the starting center.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Well, the depth is not where it needs to be.
no, and we don't. I mean, we don't have. You know, I think Reed can be that backup guard. Um, Nelson could be that backup tackle, but is it going to be one of those things that every time somebody's nicked up, we're going to have to play, jigsaw puzzle of moving guys around, and then you lose the camaraderie, you use the chemistry
Right.
of guys working together.
Right. But I mean, I think um, the development wasn't there for these guys. Obviously, they weren't
No.
developing, with the previous coaching staff. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see these players that we saw the potential. I mean, we'll see obviously, how they progress, and I have full faith in the coaching staff that's in place for that to happen. So, I mean, we'll see. So, moving from the offensive line, let's jump to the other side. Let's go to defensive line. Obviously, Rousseau, Silvera has been a dog in practice, starting fights. That's one of the only knocks on Silvera has been that edge, that dog in him that everybody talks about. I mean, it's cool, but it seems like he wants to fight, every single time. And I'm gonna comment something on Silvera, especially that me and you have talked about it, and we actually saw it in that picture that they took in front of the Hard Rock with his shirt off. You saw there was a lot of weight there that wasn't good weight, but I did see him yesterday at the scrimmage, and it does look like he's lost some of that weight. The only thing I will say about Silvera is his ability to play with that fire and to play with that intensity for more than just a couple snaps. He lacks that football shape. He has the body, he has the frame, he checks he hits the check mark on everything, but when it comes to that football shape and him being able to stay on the field, I mean, yesterday I think it was like after like the first play or the first or second play, he got dinged up, and then he went back in, and then tapping on the helmet, tapping on the helmet. It just I need to see Silvera consistently be that dog and be able to stay on that field. Because the talent's there. The talent's there.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we saw, and again, both of us love the dog in Nesta, because Nesta plays like a hurricane.
Yeah.
He plays with that edge on that chip on his shoulder. He plays tough. He plays mean, and we love that. So, don't mistake it. Don't. We love the dog. We even love the starting of fights and the aggressiveness.
That's
Man,
fine.
I'm sorry, that's a D tackle.
Yeah.
That's what you want on a D tackle.
Yeah.
But you got to stay on the field.
You gotta stay on the field.
And we saw in that Wisconsin game when Gerald Willis was out, that Nesta got more playing time. He was huffing and puffing.
Yeah, he was.
He was hands on his knees and trying to get some air.
Yeah.
So the thing is, because we talked a lot about who would be our starting D tackles this year.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be Chigozie from UCLA coming in, and Nesta? And then all of a sudden, John Ford has really taken that step forward that we've been waiting for with John Ford.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, Ford is 6'5",
Nice.
3 bills, and he reshaped his whole body.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't seen John Ford lately, pull him up recent pictures of him, because that dude doesn't look anything like he looked a couple of years ago.
And I saw him yesterday up close, and obviously he couldn't play. I think he had something on his elbow.
Yeah, he's banged up.
He's a little banged up, but he is big. He is big, and it looks like good weight. So
Yep.
my expectation.
Yes, he has something going on with his wrist. Is what John Ford, what I've heard. Yeah, something going on with his wrist, and I guess he's seeing a specialist to decide what they're going to do with the wrist going forward. But it's not a serious injury. It's a wrist problem, which obviously does matter for a D tackle with hand placement. But
I saw most of that arm wrapped up yesterday. So I don't know if maybe it's something else besides the wrist, but I pictured because of the leap that he's made and the great things that we've been hearing about Ford. I mean, I'm thinking Silvera and Ford, and then
Right.
obviously you got Garvin and Rousseau. I think
Right.
those are should be our starters there. Um, but
I know people talk about Jagosi, people talk about Trayvon Hill, and listen, they got to earn their spot. They got to win their spot. But you look at the jump forward Scott Patchin has done.
Patch is
He's going to
another
be
one.
in that rotation.
Patch is another one.
Okay, but to me, you're right. The two most talented DNs on our team are Gregory Rousseau and Jonathan Garvin. And yes, I did say Gregory Rousseau first. As great as Garvin is, and he's tremendous, Rousseau's a freak. I've said this
That
before.
length, he has that length that is just out of this world. He has the
It,
height. He has the motor. He has everything.
I don't like, I don't like to compare young players to older players that already had established themselves,
Right.
because it's unfair. But from the moment I saw Rousseau, and I hate to compare anybody to a hater, because my feelings on the Florida haters, but Rousseau reminds me of Javon Curse in that, and Javon Curse's nickname was the
The
Freak,
freak,
and it
freak
was the
athlete.
Freak for a reason.
Right.
And that's what Greg Rousseau is.
Right.
He's 6'6", 250, ripped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, long arms, incredible bend, incredible lean, tremendous agility. I mean, this guy, when he puts it together, is going to be an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I mean, that should be the starters, but then Nesta Silvera can Nesta play starter snaps. Because if you have 70 defensive snaps from scrimmage,
Right.
okay, if you're the starter, you should play 50 of them.
Right.
Have somebody spell you for 20.
Exactly.
Is Nesta's conditioning at the point that he can play 50 snaps?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at John Ford and somebody else being the starter and Nesta being on the second team, because he's going to have a tough time being able to play starter snaps.
I think so. I mean, we'll see how the rest of spring and then the summer program and fall goes. I mean, hopefully, he gets into that football shape, and hopefully we see.
And we love the way he plays.
Oh yeah.
The guy plays ferocious football, which is what you want in your D tackle.
Right.
He is the bully on that defensive line. We love the way he plays. He has tremendous talent. He stays low. One of the knocks on Gerald Willis that people said in terms of the draft is his pad level.
Right.
Nesta stays really low, can drive. I mean, he has all those things that you and you and me both love him.
Yeah.
And love that dog in him.
Yeah.
But he needs to stay on the field.
Yeah.
He needs to stay on the field.
All right, big dog. Well, let's All right, big dog. So we have to get into the hot topic, the hottest topic, I would say, down here for the Hurricanes, the quarterbacks. Your impressions thus far, your prediction. We'll give our prediction at the end, but
Okay.
your impression thus far based on the footage we've seen and the hype and the things that we've been hearing about from Enos and from people that have been watching the practices and such.
Here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons that you see so many NFL draft busts, and it happens in college too. I mean, highly regarded high school guys, is everybody falls in love with all these bells and whistles about quarterbacks. Hey, he's 6'4", he can throw it through a brick wall, he could throw it 100 yards standing still, and he runs a 4.6 40, and he's this and that. And the reality of it is this: what makes a quarterback a great quarterback is, can you quickly read the defense in regards to how it affects the play that you're running, read it quickly, and then deliver the ball on time to the right guy with precise accuracy. Period.
Right.
That's what makes a quarterback great. If you can do that at a high level, you will be a great quarterback. And if you can't, you won't be.
Right.
Simple as that. Everything else is just window dressing. Okay. Look at the greatest quarterbacks of all time, guys that have won multiple Super Bowls, guys that are in that list. What do they have in common? They all had in common that they could deliver the ball, making up their mind quickly, because you have to process things quickly as the play's unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
Our play against what the defense is doing. Can you make up your mind quickly, throw it to the right guy on time with precise accuracy?
Right.
If you could do that at a high level, you're an elite quarterback. If you can't, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And the thing is, so when I always said that I believe there was Jarren Williams was the guy, listen, I've been a Canes fan since before Jarren Williams' dad was born. Okay? So I want the best guy. That's who I want. I want whoever Dan Enos and Manny Diaz believe. I have faith that they're going to pick the best guy.
Right.
The reason why, one of the things that I started turning on Mark Richt last year, and in fact, a shout out to the Orange Bowl boys. We have no connection with them. We're just fans of their podcast. They had Malik Rozier on the podcast, and Malik talked about it. Malik talked about that in practice, if you did not throw the ball, and mind you, it does have some reason for it. There's some reason behind it. But if you did not throw the ball to the guy that you were supposed to, even if you completed it for a big gain or a touchdown, Rick would get on you. No, you're supposed to throw it to that guy. And the reason for it is obviously when you run that same play during the game, there's a possibility that the guy that you throw it to is not going to be open.
Right.
So you should follow the progression. So I get that. But the problem is Rick didn't put enough of an emphasis on accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Every time that we saw Rick last year talk about Jarren Williams, and it was 6 or 7 times, he kept saying, man, is he accurate. He doesn't always throw it to the right guy, but he almost always hits what he aims at.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember when he was asked, this was coming out of spring practice, because Jarren in spring was 17 of 25, 68% that you mentioned. Okay. He was asked, are you going to for sure redshirt Jarren Williams? And he got upset with the reporter for asking that. It was, no. Just because he's a freshman, if he gives us the best chance to win, it's up to the coaches to simplify things for him and maybe just give him a need to know type of information, because we need to then get him on there if he's the best guy.
Right.
Well, you also heard from Rozier in that Orange Bowl boys interview that, he was going back and forth between those quarterbacks. If you're having accuracy issue with both quarterbacks and you have a guy who you said, I'm not saying just what I said, Mark Richt said that Jarren Williams' accuracy was otherworldly, was next level.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Harley, this spring, what did he say when he talked about Jarren Williams? He said good things about all 3 quarterbacks. But what did he say?
He's an NFL quarterback. He reminds me of an NFL quarterback.
That's what Mike Harley said. The only one he said that about was Jarren. He said because almost always the ball is in the perfect location.
Right.
It's in the perfect location for them to get yards after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the perfect location where the defender can't get to it, but the offensive player can, the receiver can.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things, and you saw Mike Harley smile because he said good things about Nkosi and he said good things about Tate. But when he said Jarren, he said it's like playing with an NFL quarterback.
Right.
Because it's almost always in the perfect location.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I started turning on Rick, because, listen, there's freshman quarterback that are playing all over. In college football, there is no 10-year deals.
Right.
Okay, so you're always going to have turnover every 2 or 3 years at the quarterback position.
Right.
So if your best guy is a freshman, you need, as a coach, to get him out there, and not you need to be made to feel comfortable in order for you to play him. That's the thing that I turned on Rick when he talked about Cam Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, they asked him, why did Cam Harris not get out there earlier? And he said, because what you were alluding to earlier, that Cam had to know there's a lot more than just carrying the ball, which there is.
True, right.
Blitz pickup and knowing what your assignment is during blitz pickup, knowing how to run the proper routes, the proper timing, how to set up your blocks, those type of things. There's a lot more than just running ability.
Right.
So, but he didn't say that Cam Harris had to learn that. He said that Cam Harris had to not only learn that, but then convince the coaches to feel comfortable enough to play him.
Right.
And I've never heard a coach describe it like that.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the Jaren comment. You know, and I know a lot of people got down on Jaren. He gained some bad weight, last season because he sort of lost what can you say? He sort of lost focus because he felt that Rick was being unfair and not allowing him to play.
Right.
He almost transferred that both of the Ricks had to convince him to stay. So, but at the end of the day, when you look at Jaren and you watch tape of him, look at the ball placement.
Right.
Look at the way he throws guys open, anticipation throws. I know it was only Savannah State and there was only 3 passes and he completed just 1. But you look at all 3 of those passes. He went to throw an out to Mark Pope that Mark Pope slipped coming out of the break, but the ball was there where it had to be. He threw basically a fade to Njoku.
Right.
Okay. And he put it in a good spot and Njoku couldn't hang on to it. And then the Marcus Ezra completion, he threw it right over the linebackers, beautiful touch, and put it where it needed to be. So that's the thing, that at the end of the day, I think Jaren gives us the best chance to be an elite quarterback.
Yeah.
Because he delivers the ball.
Exactly. Well, Jaren, to me, ever since I saw him in the spring game, and obviously me and you were looking at his videos, when he committed to us and, watching film. I mean, like we said, guys, we watch, videos and film and we do our research on these players. So, we're talking based on things that we've actually analyzed and, we've actually seen. So, Jaren, for me and you, that's been our guy since day one. Nkosi, I know there's a lot of Nkosi fans, and don't get me wrong. In terms of like arm talent, arm strength, Nkosi has it. He's more mobile.
I wouldn't say arm talent because a lot of people make that mistake.
Arm strength.
Arm strength, Nkosi's the strongest arm.
Yeah.
Arm talent, when coaches talk about arm talent, it isn't just strength. It's accuracy. It's the setup, the mechanics behind it, the release point,
right?
Consistent release point.
Right.
So arm talent, Jaren has the most arm talent.
Jaren has it.
Nkosi has the most powerful arm.
Exactly, the most powerful arm. The thing also about Nkosi, and alluding to what you just said about Jaren, is that motion is long. The longer
Nkosi's.
Yeah, Nkosi's motion it's long. The longer your motion is, the bigger the probability that release point is not going to be the same every single time. And we've seen it with Nkosi. We've seen Nkosi make some passes that you're just like, wow, that's an NFL throw. And then we've seen Nkosi on the very next play make some passes that you're just like, okay, who are you throwing it to? So Nkosi has way too much inconsistency for me to be able to trust him. I saw it yesterday in the scrimmage. Nkosi made some good throws. He hit Pope on a good slant, and he makes some very good throws at times. But then came to the goal line, there was 3 straight passes there where Enos laid into him because he was way off. So what we need, as a quarterback for this program is somebody who's consistent and somebody that is going to deliver the ball with precision, accuracy, regardless if it's the right decision or not. So, and that's what we've seen with Jaren. At least what I've seen, his head is always on a swivel, even if he goes through his progressions, very well in my opinion. Checks down when he, at least based on the things that I've seen, he goes through his progressions, hits his check down man when there's nothing there. Nkosi sometimes goes back there and I see him thinking way too much. And then he gets caught like a deer, in the headlights. So then, you add that in with his motion and, he completed 50% of his passes last year. I mean, you can't have that as a quarterback. If you're completing less than 60% of your passes, look at Kaya's first year Mark
with
Richt's
Rick.
first year with Kaya. Okay, Kaya wasn't amazing, wasn't great, but he was completing over 60% of his passes.
62.
62.
Kaya, when people talk about his offense, and I'm not defending Rick's offense.
Right.
Okay, I love Dan Enos' offense. I love the motion. I love the what he does with formations and the way the personnel might be the same, and he completely changes what he does with formation.
Right.
We all love that.
Right.
Miami fans, have been praying for a coach like Dan Enos.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all well and good. I'm not defending Mark Richt's offense, but Brad Kaya completed 62% of his passes under Mark Richt.
Right.
Okay, so people want to say that Nkosi just completed 50 because of Mark Richt, or some people even said about drop passes.
Right.
Every quarterback has to deal with drop passes.
Right.
Okay, and some of Nkosi's drop. We looked at the FSU game, and everybody talks about the comeback of the FSU game, and Nkosi threw 4 touchdown passes. But if you look at that game, the reason we were down is because how poorly Nkosi was playing.
Right.
He ended the game 12 for 30, which is 40%.
Right.
His last 29 passes of last season, he completed 7.
There you go.
Out of 29, less than 25%.
Right.
Okay, so the thing with Nkosi, like you said, is the elongated motion. It's an inconsistent release point, and he sometimes doesn't put the proper touch. I mean, you look at the touchdown pass to Brevin Jordan. Thing was beautiful.
Right.
I mean, he dropped it out of a bucket, but then we saw a slant that Jeff Thomas was wide open. That not only was it behind him, he threw it like a 10-yard pass. He threw it with so much zip that you could hear the ball hitting Jeff Thomas's hand.
Well, that's the thing. People like to attribute, Nkosi's completion percentage to drop passes, but a lot of those drop passes was because of what we're talking about. Because the ball was not where it needed to be. Or it was, like you said, he would throw a little slant pattern and just beam it. And, okay, yes, it hit his hands, but he wasn't putting the touch that he needed to put on the passes. And that's something that, that's why I like Jaren. Because Jaren can zip it in there when he needs to, but Jaren has that touch and he has that NFL accuracy. So that's why I've always liked Jaren, and I've always thought that Jaren is going to be the best guy. So, I mean, obviously, the last guy we should talk about, we covered Jaren, covered Nkosi. When it came to yesterday's scrimmage, I think Jaren had the best day. The offense was the most fluent with Jaren, I think. Nkosi, wasn't far behind him, but Jaren still won the day. Tate had a terrible day, but Tate can bring, he has a set of skills that I believe neither of the two have in terms of being able to make plays, and he's so dynamic as an athlete that's why I think Tate really, when you watch him play, jumps out of the screen at you because of he improvises a lot. Especially his biggest strength, in my opinion, is if a play breaks down, Tate will find a way to make a play. And that's something that Tate has, I believe, over Nkosi and Jaren.
Yeah, there's no doubt the best athlete is Tate. Okay,
Tate.
That's hands down. If you look at for those of you that don't know, they have these combine style openings and stuff like that where they measure players 40-yard dash, short shuttle, all these different things, and they give what's called a spark rating.
Right.
And a spark rating is it's spark, just like spark plug, but with a Q instead of a K at the end. And Tate's spark rating was in the 98th percentile of quarterbacks, which means, I mean, he is an elite level athlete.
Right.
Okay. Ran for over 2,000 yards in high school, 35 touchdowns. Tate's athleticism is off the charts. Okay. But what we have seen, and now multiple times, is as a thrower, he's well behind not only Jaren, even Nkosi.
Right.
In terms of, but he has the ability to throw on the run. If you look at some of the plays in that Rutgers game at Ohio State, he made some throws running to his left that were just gorgeous. I mean, when he put the ball right where it needed to be and twisted his body around, and he is tremendously explosive as a runner.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do want to mention here, and I hate to, we're discussing Tate and go back to Jaren, is that there has been this misconception among Miami fans that just because Jaren was a pro style quarterback, that he wasn't a plus athlete.
Right.
Jaren actually ran for 800 more yards in high school than Nkosi did.
Mm-hmm.
Jaren ran for almost 1,300 yards and 22 touchdowns in high school. So Jaren can run. He's a good athlete. He can throw on the run, and he always looks downfield.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where this misconception came that Jaren was like Brad Kaya. He was strictly a pocket passer.
Right.
If you look at Jaren's film, he broke some ankles making great moves, was a very good runner, and a very consistent type of getting first down type of runner.
Mm-hmm.
So Jaren can move. Now, Tate, the thing that we don't know yet with Dan Enos is how much does he value the improvisational athletic skills of Tate over the better throwers of Jaren and Nkosi.
Right.
The thing with there's a, and I can't remember the offensive coordinator.
Wait a second, because I would stop you there. I do not think that Nkosi is a better thrower than Tate.
You don't?
No, I don't. When it comes to accuracy and delivering the ball where it needs to be on a more consistent basis, I give it to Tate over Nkosi. I
agree with you. Short and intermediate. I agree with you
because Nkosi has a much better. He has more arm strength than Tate does, so he could throw a bomb, maybe whereas Tate can't. But when it comes to short and intermediate, I still give it to Tate.
I would agree with you. I have seen with Tate some concern on outs, because on out patterns you gotta put some mustard on the ball. You got to put some zip.
Yeah, he doesn't throw a very good spiral, that's for sure.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't throw a good spiral, and sometimes when you get in elements, and that lack of spiral can cause that ball to dip and dive, and I mean I understand what you're saying. I do think on throwing on the run, I think that's where Tate can come up to that level of Jaren and Nkosi. In the pocket, Tate tends. I mean, obviously he's a shorter guy. He's 5'11", and Nkosi 6'4", and Jaren's like 6'3". So, maybe just the fact that he is shorter makes him a little less comfortable in the pocket. But we don't know is to what extent does Dan Enos put a premium on that athletic ability. Because the thing I was going to mention is there was a coach that I heard this last year. He says he wants a 25% quarterback. And what he meant by that is he's going to have the best play, or a good play at least, 75% of the time.
Right.
The other 25%, he needs a quarterback that can save him in that 25% that he didn't call the right play.
Right.
And still make something positive.
Right.
Tate has that to another level. And listen, you can't argue. You can make a case that Tate was the greatest high school quarterback ever. And I know that sounds crazy, but 43-0, he won 3 national championships at a school that never won one before Tate and hasn't won one since Tate.
Right.
Playing top-tier competition, because in Nevada, they didn't have good competition, but before they started league play, they played St. Thomas. They played the good schools in California. They played good schools in Texas.
Right.
And he went 43-0 at Bishop Gorman.
Right.
3 national titles, 3 years as a starter. You can't argue with that. 113 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions.
Yeah.
Let me say that again, because it sounds like Xbox numbers.
Right.
He threw 113 touchdowns and only had 9 interceptions in 3 years as a player.
Right.
Another 35 touchdowns as a runner. So that's 148 touchdowns against just 9 interceptions.
Right.
Okay?
No, the talent is there. The talent,
The, the,
yeah, is there.
that's the thing. The talent is there. He has athleticism that's off the charts, tremendous intangibles. You saw that people talk about his, and he might rub you the wrong way, but he has a you attitude. I mean, he has that
That
swag,
fire.
that
He has
cockiness,
a
right?
competitive fire. I mean, yesterday the interception that he threw to DJ Ivy, it's funny because Tate fans, you know, are the ones that would be like, yeah, he threw an interception, but man, did you see him get back on that tackle? Because it was actually an interception at DJ Ivy. DJ Ivy, did a little lateral to Pigney, and then so Pigney was running, and Tate just came and Tate took him down.
Yeah.
Tate did come up with the tackle, so he has that competitive fire that I do like. But I mean, so far, he's obviously the newest one. They all have pretty much a clean slate because it's a new offense. It's a new offensive coordinator. So you can't really say that no, Tate isn't playing well because he's not familiar with the offense. Frankly, none of the guys are familiar with the offense. So basically, so far in spring, I give the edge to Jaron, and then I would put in Cozy behind Jaron, and then Tate, and then that's basically where we're at right now. We especially saw that in yesterday's scrimmage. So Jared had the better day, not by much, but I mean they
Well,
did lead to almost all the touchdowns on the day was because of Jaron. So
no, all the touchdowns were when Jaron was a quarterback.
well,
Nobody else
well,
scored a touchdown.
well, yeah, with quarterbacks, yeah, Nigel did run a touchdown back.
Yeah, but I guess they cut it off at the 40 or 45, whatever,
Yeah,
because Nigel ran it back for a touchdown.
but he did.
But the only Jaron had 4 series,
Hmm.
okay, 3 touchdowns and a field goal.
Yeah, that last touchdown to Peyton though, I mean, you got kind of lucky because it could have been
No,
it could have been picked off.
no doubt,
Yeah.
no doubt. But it was also a fourth down play. At the end of the game,
Right.
you got to throw it. You got to throw it because he took a bad sack on the previous play.
Yeah, exactly.
So no. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's the thing that I see. And you're right. I think right now there's no doubt. I think Jaron has been solidly the best.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Cozy right behind him,
Right.
and then a big drop off.
Yeah.
A big drop off to where Tate has been.
But we'll see. We'll see because I'm not counting Tate out yet. But let's wrap this up and let's wrap it up with some percentages. Me and you always have we always give our percentages here and there on what we think is going to start, so we might as well do it here for the podcast. Your percentage on who's gonna be taking the snaps come August 24th against the Gators.
I am going to go right now for the first time, probably. I'm going to put Tate in third. So this will be my 1.0 because my percentages before weren't in the podcast. So this will be my 1.0.
We were like at 4 or 5.0s previous to the podcast. So you have to give your predictions, based on the podcast. So this is your 1.0 predictions on where we stand right now.
I'm going Jaron 55%.
Okay.
And Cozy 25 and Tate 20.
Okay. I'm going Jaron 55. I'm going Tate 30, and I'm going in Cozy 15.
All right. I mean, you still have faith in Tate. And listen,
I still have faith in Tate. I still do.
I'm
not a Tate lover. Listen, guys, disclaimer, at the end of the day, all of these quarterbacks have a U on their helmet. Point blank. So if it's in Cozy, if Enos thinks it's in Cozy, hey, it's in Cozy. Let's go, baby. If he thinks it's Tate, it's Tate. I have 100% confidence in our coaching staff and in Dan Enos that they're gonna pick the right guy, no matter what. So I'm not a Tate lover. I'm not an Cozy hater. But I have always liked Jaron. Me and you have both. We both always like Jaron. But I still have faith in Tate. I've just seen that he's dynamic, and I think that once he gets more comfortable and stuff like that down here, I think we're gonna see certain flashes. So that's where my percentages lie. So we'll see. We have 2 more practices coming up this week, plus the spring game, I guess, quote unquote, in Orlando on Saturday, and we'll have a better evaluation after that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to go into the summer before we really know
You see,
who's going to be your quarterback.
I think it's gonna. Yeah, well, there's definitely not gonna be a name starter after spring is all said and done. I don't
Well,
think so. Dan
and
Enos
that's
hasn't even implemented his full playbook yet. So I
no,
mean,
no, and that's the thing is that you know you get between you fans, you family of Jaren camp and then Cozy camp, and then you have the Tate camp,
right.
and you have all these different things. And like you said, at the end of the day, I would have loved if you told me that whoever, any of the three, come out and just blow everybody away, and that's the guy.
Hey, so be it.
Hey, at the end of the day, I'm a U fan first and foremost.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why we're both Jaren guys is because we believe that that's the guy that has the biggest upside.
Well,
Because
no,
that's one of the things I do want to talk about before we close it out, is that when people talk about upside, they focus on one thing, and that's arm strength. Okay. Jaren's arm strength is way above average. Jaren can make all the throws,
right.
and can make all the throws quickly because he has a quick release. Okay. You can say Cozy has the strongest arm. That's fine. He does. Okay. But in terms of the highest ceiling, I see the highest ceiling is Jaren Williams because of accuracy, consistent mechanics, the things that you need to deliver the ball, like we said,
and size as well. Because
and he's a big dude.
He's a big dude.
I mean, he's solid too. He's what 6'3", 205.
Right.
I think he lost some weight because he had gained some bad weight last year.
Yeah.
So it looks like he's down to 200, 205.
Yeah.
And he's a solid guy. I mean, he's put together pretty well. And so I mean, I do think it'll end up being Jaren. But like you said, I mean, Tate, arguably the best high school quarterback ever.
Yeah.
And then Cozy has, is dripping with talent,
right.
In terms of a cannon for an arm, and he can make some plays, he can make some throws that will wow you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, consistency is where I think is going to be Jaren taking the job.
I agree, but I'm still not giving up on Tate. So, all right, hey, that's it for the quarterbacks, and that's it for our first ever podcast. I think it went well.
Absolutely. Please like and subscribe. So hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification button.
Yeah.
So you get notified when we drop our next podcast. And leave some constructive criticism. Let us know what you want to see, what you think we could do better in the future.
Yeah.
And would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing. Comments, guys, leave comments. I mean, we're going to be engaging with you guys. We're going to be talking with you guys, replying to your comments. We want to be, the most engaged that we possibly can with you guys, because at the end of the day, like my dad said earlier, we know we're not right about everything. And our opinions may be biased one way or the other. So, I mean, we just like talking about sports, especially the Hurricanes. So leave your comments. We're going to be doing this, weekly at the very least, with some, more videos mixed in here and there. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one. It's all about the you, baby.
As always, it's all about the you.
All right.